What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you as always every Wednesday. We are going through the Week 12 slate of games. Every matchup, wide receiver, cornerback matchups, wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, all that good stuff. There's timestamps in the description if you guys want to hear about a particular game. Only want to know about one of your players, one of your flex decisions that you're thinking about. You need to go to the Broncos game and then the Carolina game just to see which guy you should start. You can go ahead and skip to that using the timestamps. If at any point during this video you feel like you received some value, hit the like button down below. Leave any of your comments in the description, any questions you might have. Subscribe to the channel if you are new for more great content, and hit those bell notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live or anytime we post a video. Now let's hit the intro. All right, guys. So before we get into the first game, as always, we're going over the fastest paced games of the week according to Football Outsiders neutral pace. The fastest paced games this week are going to be the Chargers at Bills, which is by far and away of the fastest game of the week. If you see both teams rank inside the top 10 according to neutral pace. Titans at Colts, also a very fast paced game as well. Washington football team at Cowboys, and Chiefs at Buccaneers. So generally speaking, these are the games that are going to yield the most plays, which in turn usually yields the most fantasy production for the players that you have. And usually in a slow-paced game versus a fast-paced game, you generally are more okay about playing guys that are maybe fringe flex plays in a game where there's going to be a lot of scoring, a lot of passing volume, a lot of rushing volume, all that kind of stuff. So that's those games. In terms of bye weeks this week, we actually don't have a single team on bye. It's kind of weird because we have two teams on bye next week. We have the Buccaneers and Panthers on bye next week, but this week there isn't a bye. So I don't know why they wouldn't have just put the Buccaneers and Panthers on bye this week, but what do I know? I'm not the one who makes the schedule. So bit of a special week in terms of football because I'm Canadian, so it's not Thanksgiving for me, but Thanksgiving is tomorrow for those of you who are American, as probably most of you are listening to this channel. So we have 12:30 Thursday night or Thursday day football, I guess. Texans at Lions. The Lions, for whatever reason, get a Thanksgiving game every year, even though they haven't been relevant for 50, 60 years. Anyway, quarterback-wise in this game, you want to be starting Deshaun Watson because he's an absolute stud, and you could start Matthew Stafford as well. Since Bill O'Brien was fired, we've seen Deshaun Watson score 25 PPR, or I guess the format's not relevant, but points per game other than Cleveland, where the weather affected the game. And he was the passing offense was downgraded in general. And I kind of told you guys before that game, if the weather's bad, sit Deshaun Watson. And that turned out to be the right call. But Stafford on the other side of things has a prime matchup and should be see a boost to his passing output if either Swift or Kenny Golladay are back for this game. I'd imagine Swift is back, but probably not Kenny Golladay if I had to guess. But either way, if either of them are back, that improves the offense, which should lead to more scoring for Matthew Stafford and the Lions. To the running back position in this game, I'm going to say sit Duke Johnson, sit him, and start DeAndre Swift. So the reason I'm saying sit Duke Johnson is I said all last week, I don't care how much volume guys like Duke Johnson and Kalen Ballage get. I don't care if Duke gets 15 to 20 touches and 75+% of the snaps, which is exactly what happened last week. That's a recipe for a workhorse back normally, but Duke Johnson sucks. He's terrible at football. He went 10 for 15 against a bottom 3 run defense last week in the New England Patriots. Their DVOA is 29th right now. And I know the Lions are a poor rush defense as well, but they're also bad against the pass. And I expect Watson to repeat exactly what he did last week against the Patriots, who are also bad against the pass, and basically just carry the entire offense. 88% of the yards accounted for last week for Deshaun Watson. I think he just carries his team with no run game and no defense like he's been doing all season. And then in terms of DeAndre Swift, we saw the Swift breakout prior to his concussion that he sustained. If he is back, which I imagine he will be back, he is a top 10 guy. If he is not back, then we saw Kerryon Johnson outsnapped Adrian Peterson 70% to 30% last week. So if Swift is out, I'll roll out Kerryon Johnson as a top 30 running back, but I'm not playing Adrian Peterson as anything more than a desperation. I just need a touchdown out of the guy because I don't think that he's going to provide you much else other than that. But let's just hope Swift is back and we can avoid this backfield entirely in terms of question marks. To the wide receiver position in this game, you are going to be starting Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and Marvin Jones. And then if Kenny Golladay plays, you obviously start him, but I don't think he's going to play. So Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks are as close to locks for production as any wide receiver tandem in the NFL right now. And it's all due to the strong play of Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's absolutely cooking. Both of these guys are in great matchups, and Watson is currently my quarterback too as a result on the week. You see Will Fuller going up against Desmond Trufant, who got absolutely abused by Terry McLaurin last week. And then you have Randall Cobb, who's actually ruled out for this game with the second highest advantage. So that'll likely be Kiki QT in the slot. And then Brandon Cooks against Amani O. Amani O is a long corner. He doesn't have much speed, so I expect Brandon Cooks to be able to take care of him in that game. And then on the other side of things, we have Marvin Jones against against Vernon Hargraves, who is currently allowing the sixth most yards in his coverage of any cornerback and the sixth most yards after catch against Marvin Jones, who is a guy who can make plays after the catch. And despite having a down game last week, still has received great volume without Kenny in the lineup. And again, even if Kenny Golladay is back, that improves the offense in general. And I'm still willing to start Marvin Jones anyway. To the tight end position, you see TJ Hawkinson's the only fantasy relevant tight end in this game. I know Jordan Akins is kind of getting involved, but I'm not really willing to start him at any point during the season. I think we kind of know what he is, but TJ Hawkinson, we know what he is too. And that's top 5 tight end. He's a top 5 tight end in points per game. He never leaves your lineup as far as I'm concerned, unless you have Darren Waller or Travis Kelce. TJ Hawkinson's right there behind those guys. And then obviously George Kittle if he was healthy, but TJ Hawkinson's been excellent. We've seen the breakout season from the former 8th overall pick. And I think that's definitely encouraging if you're a Lions fan that you didn't waste a top 10 pick on a tight end. It looks like he is going to be a great player going forward. All right, to the next game. Also a Thanksgiving game will be at 4:30, I believe, is when it airs. That's Washington football team at Dallas Cowboys. This is usually a Thanksgiving tradition. I think these teams play every Thanksgiving. To the quarterback position in this game, I would sit both guys. They're my quarterback 23 and 26 respectively. It's a decent matchup for Alex Smith, but there is no shortage of streaming options this week. So I would hold off on both of these guys because I expect both of them to be kind of low floor in more of a low scoring game, with the Cowboys offense having a tougher matchup against the Washington defense and the Washington offense not just being very good anyway. So I would sit both guys in this game. To the running back position, you start Antonio Gibson, you can flex JD McKissic, and you start Ezekiel Elliott. Antonio Gibson is currently banged up right now. That is something to monitor, but I would imagine he is going to be fine for this game. He had a career game against Dallas a couple weeks ago where he finally, I believe it is the only game this season he's exceeded 20 carries. And last week, we actually saw Gibson finally outsnap JD McKissic, but it could have been a result of the game script as they were leading for most of that game. And once Joe Burrow went down, they kind of just like ran the ball out of that Bengals game. So we'll have to see how the Washington backfield shakes out, but I imagine it's going to be their normal roles, assuming everyone's healthy. And then Ezekiel Elliott, obviously he gets back on track. Last week, having Andy Dalton in the lineup definitely helped out the offense. Having a good matchup helped out Zeke Elliott. And he looks like he's going to be a guy that you can somewhat trust as a back-end RB1 going forward. To the wide receiver position in this game, we have Terry McLaurin, Cooper Kupp as the two guys that you'll be starting. And then I would sit CeeDee Lamb in this game. Terry McLaurin versus Chido Awuzie, good for a 28% advantage according to PFF. And I think Terry McLaurin continues the rampage he's been on. Hasn't scored a touchdown yet, but in hashtag no shadow coverage season for Terry McLaurin, he's been great in terms of targets and receptions and yards. So hopefully he can get into the end zone in this one, as it is quite an easy matchup for a guy like Terry McLaurin. The Cowboys receivers, on the other hand, both get on track for Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. The addition of Andy Dalton to the lineup helped spark this offense quite a bit. But this is a team in the Washington football team that is just way too good against wide receivers for the Cowboys to take advantage of this matchup without Dak Prescott. I don't think I would be able to play CeeDee Lamb this week, but I still will use Amari Cooper as the number one in this offense. You can see the matchups on the screen right now. You have Amari Cooper going up against Ronald Darby, who's been okay in coverage, but Amari Cooper should not have any problems there. And CeeDee Lamb does have a favorable matchup, but like I said, this Washington football team defense has just been really good against receivers. And CeeDee Lamb is already in that territory of a guy that you don't want to be relying on. He's more so like a wide receiver 4 that in a good matchup becomes a wide receiver 3. And then as of right now, this is a bad matchup. So he's probably a wide receiver 4, maybe even wide receiver 5 this week. So to the tight end position, you can stream both guys, I guess, Logan Thomas and Dalton Schultz, but neither of them is desirable. I would say, like, you don't want to have to be starting any of these guys. There is no bye weeks this week, so I'd imagine you should be able to find better options than these two dudes. But if you're absolutely desperate and completely screwed, then I guess you could use them. But if you're using those guys, then you probably are in a bad situation. All right, so to the next game. We actually have some breaking news, and I'll have this on the screen right now, but the NFL is actually postponing this game. So the Ravens have had a number of COVID-related disturbances, if you want to call it that, this week, relating to J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram getting testing positive, a couple other coaching staff members and personnel and executives and stuff like that. So I think the Ravens, this game is being postponed. I'm not sure till when. I don't have that information at hand as of right now. I'd imagine they're going to try and postpone it till Sunday so that they don't disrupt the game altogether. But because both of these teams have had their bye week, they can't just like postpone it an extra week or whatever. But we'll have to see how they handle this. I'm just going to talk about this game as if it's going to happen this week. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to or not, but for the purposes of this, with the information I have right now, I'm going to assume this game just happens on Sunday and not Thursday night. In the comment section, I'm sure someone will be like, hey, this game's postponed. Yes, I know it's postponed. Hopefully it does happen this week. To the quarterback position in this game, you stream Lamar Jackson and you can stream Ben Roethlisberger. Both of these guys are fringe top 15 quarterback options for me, but Ben actually I moved down shortly after this, so he's more so just barely inside my top 20. But neither of these guys are elite options. Lamar struggles, plus the Steelers' stingy-ass defense that they have against the run, especially allowing 0 quarterback rushing touchdowns, is a situation I just don't really want a part of if I can help it. Lamar Jackson is not the quarterback he was last year. He's not the fantasy quarterback he was last year, the real life quarterback he was last year. He needs to be treated as any other quarterback, and in a bad matchup as this one is, you should be able to sit him for better options, like a guy like Derek Carr, for example, going up against Atlanta. I would play Derek Carr over Lamar Jackson. So, and then in terms of Ben, he just has a difficult matchup going up against the Ravens secondary. That's not a good matchup for any of his receivers. So, and he's a kind of a guy that you can stream the matchups for regardless. So I would stay away from Ben Roethlisberger if I can help it. To the running back position, my start of the week is Gus Edwards, assuming this game is played, of course. Why is Gus Edwards my start of the week? So initially, some of you might be like, start of the week against the Steelers run defense. The Steelers run defense is elite. It's because he's alone in the backfield. J.K. Dobbins and Ingram are out with COVID, and I guess with this game being postponed, that could change. They could be able to return if this game is on Sunday. I'm not exactly sure what stage of the protocol they're in. If they're just like COVID, they have the virus. So if they're able to be asymptomatic and test negative before the game, maybe they're able to play. But again, for the purposes of this, I'm just going to assume that both of those guys are out. Edwards will get elite volume if this is the case. This differentiates from a guy like Duke Johnson, who I just said I don't care about his volume, because Edwards is actually a good running back. Edwards is a good runner. He's good on the goal line. I think he's actually going to be productive if he's given a lot of work, which I expect to happen. Think about it this way. If Gio Bernard or Chris Carson was going up against Pittsburgh, would you start him as a top 24 running back? Of course you would. And I don't even think that's outrageous. I think Gio Bernard and Chris Carson's about the skill level of Gus Edwards. I think he might even be a bit better than Chris Carson. They'd be starts, in my opinion, and that's why Gus is inside my top 20 currently. And I actually have him against the higher than the other running back in this game, in James Conner. James Conner in bad matchups is no bueno. He has not been good in bad matchups. He hasn't been good in good matchups. Against Jacksonville this past week, he was good, but let's not forget the 2 weeks prior, he was terrible against Dallas and Cincinnati, who are way worse or way easier matchups than a team like Baltimore, who's among the league's best at defending the run. So I'm quite a bit lower on James Conner this week compared to consensus. I have him outside my top 20 running backs, and I think he belongs in back-end wide or running back 2 territory going forward, especially in matchups like this where he's just completely overmatched against Baltimore. To the wide receiver position, I would say you can confidently sit all the Baltimore Ravens wide receivers. Marquise Brown's time in the sun is over. He can't be started. You could probably drop him if a guy like Michael Pittman is on your waiver wire, and much rather own a guy like Michael Pittman than Marquise Brown at this point. On to the Steelers side of things, this is not a good matchup for the Steelers trio, as I mentioned, but they cannot be sat. I just don't think you can sit these guys. They're obviously downgraded. All 3 are inside my top 30, but last week they were all inside my top 20 going up against a good matchup. So it looks like Deontay Johnson, if you see on the screen right now, has the worst matchup, but he, of the 3, gets the most volume. So I'm not exactly sure how to treat this. My policy with this receiver core is I'm just honestly just not going to try and guess which one goes off each week. I just would, if I have one of them, I'm starting them. And if he disappoints, that's kind of sucks to suck. If one or two in this game disappoint, it's probably because of the matchup, and they should be fine going forward for next week because each one of them brings something different to the table. With Juju being the run after catch guy, Chase Claypool being the big play guy, Deontay Johnson being the target hog. I would order them Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, but again, it can change week over week depending on matchups and how the game flows and all that kind of stuff. So To the tight end position in this game, and then I'll get off this one. I've been going pretty long on this game. You start Andrews and you start Ebron. Andrews saw his usual targets and big plays that we were missing from him the last couple weeks. And after this week against Pittsburgh, he really has nothing but cake matchups to close out the season. And as you can see on the screen right now, Jared Smola tweeted this out. He ran a route on 89% of Lamar Jackson's dropbacks on Sunday, and that was his highest rate of routes run since week 1. So we can see a guy like Mark Andrews actually getting more involved in the offense now and back to his usual allotment of routes and snaps and kind of stuff like that. So Mark Andrews, as far as I'm concerned, is a top 5 tight end rest of season. He was a guy I told you to go trade for a number of weeks back because I said his schedule gets really, really easy. And I stand by that statement. I think he's going to win a lot of people leagues if you traded for him when his value was very low. Ebron, on the other hand, in terms of targets, has probably been right up there with a guy like Mark Andrews and a guy like TJ Hawkinson in terms of consistency from his target share. So I think he's a guy that could be confidently started as well. All right, to the next game, and I'll try and speed these up a little bit. Dolphins at Jets. Quarterback-wise in this game, you stream Tua Tagovailoa, and then you sit Joe Flacco or Sam Darnold, whoever ends up playing. I first of all, on Tua's, the situation with Tua last week, I love the message that Brian Flores sent. I absolutely cannot stand the narrative that quarterbacks are these delicate flowers that need to be treated with kid gloves. Oh, we don't want him looking over his shoulder. We don't want any competition for him. We just want him to like focus on the game and be the guy for us. Like, no, Tua's a competitor. He had competition at Alabama with Jalen Hurts. He's had competition probably his entire life playing football. He can beat competition. I think he comes out and absolutely flames the Jets and takes all of his anger out from the game that he played last week, because no one is probably more critical of Tua's performance than Tua last week. I guarantee he comes out and he just absolutely torches the Jets. So he is a guy I'm very much willing to start because I think he could have a great game in this one. To the running back position, you start Salvin Ahmed. And my start of the week, if you guys want to flame me in the comments right now, my start of the week at the running back position is Frank Gore. Yep, I said start Frank Gore. The Dolphins, number 1, are awful against the run. They're number 29 in run DVOA and top 10 in points per game to running backs for fantasy purposes. And we saw both Denver Broncos running backs absolutely torch them. And they had been 2 running backs that have been kind of struggling as far as their ground game thus far this season. So I have confidence that Frank Gore can actually be somewhat effective in this game. And number 2, LaMichael Pirine is out for this game. And I believe for the next few games, I'm not sure if they put him on IR, but he is going to be out for a while. And I think Frank Gore is alone in this backfield and should get probably 16 to 20 carries. Maybe he gets a catch or 2 and he gets into the end zone. I think he is going to be inside my top 26 running backs this week. And I would start him over a guy like JD McKissick even, and a guy like Chase Edmonds or a guy like Leonard Fournette or Le'Veon Bell. Like I would start Frank Gore over all those kind of fringe flex options because I think he is guaranteed volume in a good matchup this week. To the wide receiver position in this game, as far as the chart goes, we don't really need a chart for this game. There's only 2 receivers that are relevant enough for fantasy for me to talk about. Jamison Crowder, as far as I'm concerned, is still the receiver he's always been. He faces Nick Needham in coverage, and Gates talked about how Crowder should have gotten the ball more. And I think that lends itself to him getting peppered against Miami's weak link at cornerback. I don't think the 2 down games in terms of target share that Crowder has had are an indication of what's to come. I think they're just kind of flukes, and he's going to get back on track in this game. I know Brashad Perriman's been kind of involved, and Denzel Mims has made some nice plays, but I don't trust those guys enough in a bad matchup against the Miami Dolphins corners on the outside to perform in this game. Devontae Parker, on the other hand, I think versus rookie Bryce Hall probably won't end well for Bryce Hall. And I think that, as I mentioned with Tua, I think he's going to have a great game. And I think Devontae Parker, as his number 1 target, as his number 1 receiver, is going to have a great game subsequently. So to the tight end position in this game, Mike Gesicki's the only tight end in this game that's worth a damn. Shout out to Chris Herndon for ruining my sleepers video. That decided to get a lot of views because Chris Herndon was a guy I was really excited about this at the beginning of the season. Probably shouldn't have been because he's on the Jets and he's still Chris Herndon, who's kind of unreliable. But either way, Mike Gesicki, as much as I'd like to forget about him too, he's still a half-decent streaming option because the tight end position is just that bad. So Mike Gesicki, if you need him, I guess you could use him, but I don't think he's a great option if you need to start him. To the next game, Cardinals at Patriots. We have the 2 mobile quarterbacks in this game. You can start them both. Kyler doesn't leave your lineup, of course. His worst game of the season is 20 points, over 20 points, which is basically his floor. Cam Newton is a boomer bust guy. Unfortunately, he's not a guy that has the floor of Kyler Murray. The Cardinals, though, are allowing the 3rd most rushing yards to the quarterback position. So this could be a boom week for Cam Newton if he gets into the end zone via his legs. To the running back position in this game, there's 3 startable options. You could start Kenyon Drake and Damian Harris, and I think you can flex Chase Edmonds as well. Kenyon Drake is seeing a bottom 5 run defense in terms of DVOA, and we saw what he did to the Dallas defense a number of weeks back when he had a good matchup. And both guys, Drake and Edmonds, are starting to get involved as receivers. So I'll take them as low-end RB2/flex plays, respectively. And I think you can use them both in this game against a terrible Patriots run defense. In terms of Damian Harris, his backfield situation gets a little clearer and then a little muddier at the same time. Rex Burkhead tore his ACL, so he is out of this backfield for the rest of the season. But Damian Harris, unfortunately, has shown Sony Michel coming back off of injury likely this week. I'm not exactly sure 100% if he's going to play this week, but he has been activated from IR, and I think there's a decent chance he plays in this game. I still think it's an upgrade in terms of talent behind Damian Harris, because I think Damian Harris is by far and away the most talented running back in this backfield. And I think Rex Burkhead is by far and away the second most talented running back in this backfield. I think Michel's a worse running back than Burkhead, particularly in the receiving game, which could lend itself to Harris getting more targets, which I know some people are excited about James White getting more targets. I'm not. I'd rather see Damian Harris get the targets than I would James White, because James White just can't run the ball. So I think Michel takes over what was Rex Burkhead's ground role, but I think Harris actually gets the receiving role that Rex Burkhead left behind. I think Damian Harris is a better receiver than people give him credit for. I think he's a mid RB2 this week and going forward. I think he's a guy that you can probably roll into your lineup every single week. He's a guy that I put up there with a guy like Kenyon Drake in terms of his value and what I kind of perceive his value to be. To the wide receiver position in this game, you start DeAndre Hopkins and Jacoby Myers. You low-end flex Christian Kirk. It's not a great matchup for DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, but you are never sitting him, even if he's being shadowed by Stephon Gilmore, which I expect to happen in this game. Christian Kirk also has a rough matchup, as you can see there, with going up against J.C. Jackson, who leads the league in leads the NFL in interceptions. He's been a bit up and down, but he is a good enough corner to hold a guy like Christian Kirk, who's not necessarily an elite receiver, in check. So I think it could be a run game victory for the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals win this game, but I think it's going to be at the hands of Kyler Murray, Kenyon Drake, and Chase Edmonds on the ground. I don't think it's going to be a huge receiver game for them, with Hopkins kind of contributing as the possession guy, and maybe Andy Isabella or someone random gets like a long play, but I don't expect Christian Kirk and Hopkins to be the reason they win this game. As far as Jacoby Myers is concerned, on the other side of things, he's set to see an easier matchup than Bradley Roby last week that he saw. He has Byron Murphy in the slot, and it should be another high target game for him. We've seen Cam trust him. Cam uses him a lot, and he's getting a lot of targets against good matchups. So I'll trust Jacoby Myers as a top 36 guy this week. I think you can roll him into your lineup as well. And then finally in this game, there's absolutely zero tight ends to speak of, zero tight ends that you can use. So don't even worry about that. All right, on to the next game. We have the Panthers at the Vikings. I think you can low-end stream both whoever the Panthers quarterback ends up being and Kirk Cousins. Teddy is probably going to be back for this game if I had to guess. If he's back for this game, he's going to be inside my top 18. And if Phillip Walker, PJ Walker, is the quarterback, he'll be inside my top 22 probably, but I think he's only a desperation play at that point. Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, came through last week if you streamed him with a 3-touchdown game against the Dallas Cowboys, and he's in for another good spot at home here. I think he's going to be another great streaming option against the Panthers defense that has showed a lot of chinks in its armor the past couple of weeks, especially against Tom Brady 2 weeks ago. And this past week that they played, I don't even remember who they played, but they didn't play well, whoever it was. To the running back position in this game, you start Mike Davis as Christian McCaffrey is out, and you start Dalvin Cook. I think Christian McCaffrey will be out for this game because they have a bye week next week, as I mentioned. And it just really doesn't make any sense to bring back Christian McCaffrey for this game and then have a bye week and then all that kind of stuff. I do think Christian McCaffrey comes back this year. I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, what if they just shut Christian McCaffrey down for the year because they're out of it and they're not going to like make any make the playoffs or whatever. They want Christian McCaffrey on the field because Christian McCaffrey, for one, wants to be on the field. He's not just going to let the coaching staff shut him down. Two, Teddy Bridgewater needs to progress in this offense and all that kind of stuff. If Matt Rule wants to keep him around, they're probably evaluating Teddy Bridgewater's play right now to see if they need to go get a new quarterback. So they probably want to have all the weapons on the field for Teddy Bridgewater to use, and that includes Christian McCaffrey. So I think he will be back week 14, but I don't anticipate him playing in this game, and I think it's a beautiful matchup for Mike Davis yet again. So I think Mike Davis, we saw him get his usual allotment of work last week, and I think he'll be great in this one. To Dalvin Cook's side of things, he's going to go bonkers in this one. If Ronald Jones can have 192 yards against this run defense, imagine what Dalvin Cook can do. That's all I got to say about him. I think he's going to be absolutely tremendous in this game. He is my RB1 on the week. To the wide receiver position, you start the usual three suspects and then Adam Thielen if he plays. Adam Thielen is currently on the COVID reserve list. probably not going to play in this game, but if he does, you can obviously start him. DJ Moore, Justin Jefferson, and Robbie Anderson, the usual suspects. If PJ Walker plays, we've actually seen DJ Moore out-target Robbie Anderson and looking very good in the process of doing so. But these guys are virtually interchangeable week over week, and they're both kind of 1A, 1B type guys, and they're both in my top 24. So either guy is playable. I think they both have a high ceiling on any given week because they're both big play threats and can run after the catch. DJ Moore, you can see going up against Chris Boyd. Hook 'em horns. He's not very good, though. Robbie Anderson against Chris Jones, not the Chiefs defensive tackle, a different Chris Jones who's not very good at football. Both of those guys should be able to cash out in this game. As I mentioned, Adam Thielen is on the COVID list. Doesn't mean he necessarily has COVID. He could just be a guy who was exposed to it and he's just quarantining right now. And if he passes a bunch of tests and gets negative results or negative COVID tests, then he should be back on the field. But as of right now, I'll just operate under the assumption he's going to be out. Justin Jefferson gets Rasul Douglas in coverage. And if Adam Thielen is out, I expect to see a high target game for Justin Jefferson, and he could be an absolute monster this week. If Thielen is in, I still like both of them, though, as I mentioned. To the tight end position in this game, you start Irv Smith Jr. if he is back, and then you can low-end stream Kyle Rudolph if he is not back, because I think if Thielen is out especially, Kyle Rudolph becomes more interesting, or Irv Smith, whoever ends up being the main tight end there. If Thielen is out for sure, then these two guys actually become interesting to me, and Irv Smith will be inside my top 15, and if he's out, then Kyle Rudolph will be inside my top 17 or so. So if you need a tight end option, I would look at one of the Vikings tight ends, whoever plays in this game. To the Browns at Jaguars, the next game we have on the slate here. My start of the week at the quarterback position is one Baker Mayfield. And I would say to sit Mike Glennon. Mother Nature has not been kind to Baker Mayfield and the Browns until this week. Not only does do the Browns offense go up against the 30th ranked DVOA pass defense of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the team that's allowing the third most fantasy points to the quarterback position, but it's in sunny Jacksonville, Florida. This is a game that is not in Cleveland. It's not in Philadelphia. It's not a game where the wind and the snow and the sleet and all these other conditions are going to be affecting the game, most likely, even if it does rain in this game, which I haven't checked the weather forecast. I don't think it will. Even that is still better than the conditions they played in the past couple of weeks. So Mayfield and the Browns passing offense should get back on track in this one against the Jacksonville defense that is pretty much just terrible at everything. And speaking of terrible at everything, they're terrible against the run too. So that makes it very obvious to start both Browns running backs and to start James Robinson on the other side of things. The Browns guys will probably run wild in this game. We saw Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both have great games against the Eagles, who are a much tougher run defense than the Jacksonville Jaguars. I expect both the Browns running backs to run away with this one, pun intended, for the Cleveland Browns. And then on the Robinson side of things, he's Robinson. Robinson is Robinson. I put out a tweet that pissed off some people where I said, don't kid yourself, basically. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I don't think James Robinson's this great dynasty asset. Like, I just don't see it. I think what's going to happen this year is they're going to use up James Robinson and they're going to draft a guy, because there's not a lot of running back situations around the league that are in need of a starting running back. And I don't think the Jags necessarily need to upgrade from James Robinson. I think it's going to be more so a case of, okay, so we're in the third round of the draft and Najee Harris is still on the board because no one needs running backs around the NFL. So we're just going to pick Najee Harris because we had a back end first round grade on the guy. I think that's what's probably going to happen for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And unfortunately for James Robinson, or anyone who's trading for James Robinson in dynasty leagues, thinking you have this great option, I just don't think that's what's going to happen. We saw with Phillip Lindsay, as soon as they had the chance to bring in a guy, they brought in Melvin Gordon, because the coaching staff doesn't have a lot invested in the guy. And not only that, but I don't think Doug Marrone sticks around this year. If they have the second overall pick and get Justin Fields, they're going to fire Doug Marrone. And then they have even less invested in James Robinson. So James Robinson for this year is going to be a great option. He's a volume hog, mid-tier RB1, but I honestly think if Raekwon Armstead were the starter right now, if Devine Ozigbo was the starter right now, if Leonard Fournette was still there, they'd all be in the same situation. I just think this is a coaching staff that likes to use a workhorse back, and it doesn't matter who it is. So nothing against James Robinson. I just don't think this is going to last into the long term from a dynasty perspective. If I'm wrong about it, I'll admit it, but that's just my take on the situation. Anyway, to the wide receiver position in this game, kind of going hand in hand with my quarterback. My start of the week at the wide receiver position is Jarvis Landry. I think the matchup was a little bit better for the Jags. Unfortunately for Landry, we haven't seen a game unaffected by weather. As I mentioned, the past 3 games for the Browns have been unaffected by weather, of Jarvis Landry without Odell Beckham Jr. in the lineup in a good weather matchup. So we have yet to see Jarvis Landry see that target bump when Odell was out of the lineup, because Odell tore his ACL a number of weeks ago, and they haven't played a good weather game since, and they also had their bye week. So because of the weather in Houston, Las Vegas, and the Philadelphia games, we haven't seen Baker Mayfield throw the ball more than 20 to 25 times in any one of those 3 games. Even still, Landry has a 26% target share, which could equate to solid fantasy numbers in better weather this week at Jacksonville. So I expect Jarvis Landry to get back on track. I expect Baker Mayfield to get back on track. And I think in DFS tournaments, if you want a low-key stack, I like these 2 guys as a stack for DFS. And then to DJ Chark, on the other side of things, I think he is the only startable receiver for the Jags. The matchup got a little better for the Jags passing offense, and new quarterback Mike Glennon, who they just named the starter today. When Ward was ruled out for this game. Sorry. The matchup got a little bit better for the Jags passing offense, and new quarterback Mike Glennon, who they just made the starter today, saw an upgrade for this entire passing offense, and specifically DJ Chark, because Denzel Ward was ruled out for this game. He's not going to be playing, and Terrence Mitchell is going to be left to defend DJ Chark. And I don't think that's going to go too well, given the fact that DJ Chark has looked incredible these past couple of weeks, even last week in a down matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So to the tight end position, I think it's just the same argument for Jarvis Landry. Just copy and paste the same argument for Austin Hooper, as I said for Jarvis Landry. We have not seen him without Odell in the lineup. We need to see Austin Hooper get some targets this week. With Baker Mayfield set to throw probably more than 20 times this week, I want to see Austin Hooper get some targets in this one. Otherwise, he's kind of just an irrelevant piece of shit. All right, to the Titans at the Colts. We have a very high-paced matchup, as I mentioned. I think you can low-end stream Ryan Tannehill in this game and sit Phillip Rivers. Ryan Tannehill had a bad game last week against the Colts. He fared decent against the Ravens this past week. Sorry, he had a bad game against the Colts the first time they played, not last week. But he had a decent game against the Ravens last week. And the Colts game that he played poorly in was on Thursday Night Football. So again, take that with a grain of salt. So I do think he is streamable in this game. I know Phillip Rivers had a good game last week, but I'm not really willing to trust him a second time. I think you can find better options out there on the waiver wire other than Phillip Rivers. But I mean, I guess if you have to, he is usable. To the running back position in this game, Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor are the 2 guys that you'll be starting. If a stranger approaches you on the street and offers you some Nyheim Hines, you always say no, no matter what. Nyheim Hines is fool's gold. I told you guys this last week. No one listened. Everyone's like, Nyheim Hines is the RB1 there now. It's fine. Nyheim Hines sucks. He's so inconsistent. He's a scat back. That's how they are. Jonathan Taylor is not elite all of a sudden. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor is like this workhorse back all of a sudden, but he is capable of performing in good spots. So that makes him a flex this week because this is a good spot. And then Derrick Henry, obviously never to sit him. To the wide receiver position in this game, A.J. Brown, Michael Pittman, and are the 2 guys that you can start in this game. And then I would sit Corey Davis. And the reason I would say that for Michael Pittman as a start is 18 targets over the last 3 weeks, combining for 244 total yards and a touchdown. He gets Malcolm Butler in coverage, according to PFF this week, who's been up and down, to say the least, and is much smaller in stature than Michael Pittman, who's a very physical receiver. So I think there's a chance he can just push Malcolm Butler around, get a lot of dirty catches, maybe break some tackles after the catch, and get some things done through the air for Michael Pittman. And then also for Pittman, aside from volume, he's actually established himself as the clear number 1 in this offense, running the most routes on Indianapolis this past week and playing 16 more snaps than the next closest receiver on Indianapolis. So this is a guy with high draft capital. He was picked ahead of Jonathan Taylor in the draft. He was their first pick of the draft. The Colts actually traded down, I believe. They traded Ford DeForest Buckner, and that's how they got the lost their first round pick. But nonetheless, Michael Pittman was their first pick. He's high draft capital. He should still be on your waiver wire, as I mentioned, in most leagues. And I think he could be a league winner. I think he could be this year's kind of A.J. Brown or this year's Deebo Samuel or whoever you want to refer him to. I think he's going to be a guy that's productive the rest of the season because he looks like the clear number 1. He looks great in this offense, and Phillip Rivers clearly has some rapport with him. Corey Davis, I think, is a sit in this game. And the reason I say that, I think he's a fine option, just overall. But this Indy defense is legit. We've seen that this whole season, that we know exactly who the Indianapolis defense is at this point in the season. They're a very good defense. Against the wide receiver position specifically, his targets have been sporadic. He dropped a donut a couple weeks ago, and the depth available at wide receiver is just so good that I don't think you need to use a guy like Corey Davis this week as like the mid-tier wide receiver 4 that I see him as on the road versus a top 3 defense, as I mentioned. A.J. Brown, on the other hand, should be fine because he is the number 1 in this offense. And we've seen he doesn't need that many targets to get things done because he'll just break 60 tackles and score touchdowns on the limited targets he might get. In terms of the matchups, you can see A.J. Brown against Xavier Rhodes, Corey Davis against Rocky Sin. Obviously, he has the best matchup on the field, but I still don't want to start Corey Davis if I can help it. And then to the tight end position, you start Jonnu Smith in this game and you sit all the Colts tight ends. Red zone and big plays. I'll say it for Jonnu Smith every single week. It's his bread and butter. Could have had an excellent game last week if he pulls down a couple more of his targets. He had 6 targets last week, ended up scoring a touchdown to save his day, but I think he could have had an even better game. But Jonnu Smith is going to be inconsistent in terms of targets because he's not Darren Waller and he's not Travis Kelce. Very few tight ends are, but I think he's right in that next tier below those guys with TJ Hawkinson and Gronkowski and Andrews and those guys. I think that's where Jonnu Smith is, and he's an every week starter in my opinion. To the Giants at the Bengals. This game got a lot less interesting when Joe Burrow tore his ACL, but you stream Daniel Jones in this game because the Bengals defense and Vanilla Vic has proven his ability to perform for fantasy. And the Giants are high key. I'm just going to say it. They're the best team in the NFC East. I think they're going to win this division. And I think they're going to roll the Bengals in this one because to me, they seem like the best team in this division. They seem like the most complete team in this division. And if Daniel Jones can continue his like ascension of play, because he's been playing a lot better recently, then I think they're going to win this division easily. And then obviously Brandon Allen was actually ruled the starter for this game and not Ryan Finley. So whoever starts for this team, don't play them because Brandon Allen played a couple games last year for the Broncos and wasn't very good when he did so, but he was better than Ryan Finley. So it might even be a bit of an upgrade if you thought Ryan Finley was going to be the starter. To the running back position in this game, we have Wayne Gallman and Gio Bernard. Both guys are back-end RB2s that are starting backs for their respective teams. And that means carries, targets, potentially touchdowns. So especially for Wayne Gallman, who has a more than solid matchup and game script ahead of him, in my opinion, for the Giants, I think he's in for a top 20 running back week. That's where I have him ranked. And then Gio Bernard is a bit of a tougher matchup, but he's the starting running back. So I'll give him the benefit of a doubt and say that he is in my top 25 as well. To the wide receiver position, as I mentioned, no Burrow equals no bueno. It's not great for T. Higgins. T. Higgins was having a breakout rookie season before Joe Burrow went down. We'll have to see how much that continues going forward. I still think he is usable in this game if you need to use him. I would say he's like a low-end flex play, and the same goes for Tyler Boyd. Thankfully, we still have AJ Green on this roster to take away a guy like James Bradbury due to basically just name value and clout. We don't know that for sure. Maybe James Bradbury goes on T. Higgins and recognizes the fact that he is the better receiver of the two. But PFF expects him to be on AJ Green, so I'll trust them and say that they're going to be that's how it's going to go. And then T. Higgins could have a good game as a result. If T. Higgins were on James Bradbury, I would tell you to sit him right now. But if he's not going to be on James Bradbury, then I'll take T. Higgins to smash in this one. And then as far as I can tell, I think Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard are the only two startable receivers on the New York Giants. Big play potential for Slayton, and Shepard honestly just has a high target floor most games, but especially in this matchup where he's going up against the Bengals corners. And as you can see right there, he has Darius Slayton going up against William Jackson and Sterling Shepard against LaShawn Sims. Both of those guys should have opportunities to make plays. So if you need to use them, I don't blame you there either. To the tight end position, start Evan Ingram. The targets have always been there this season, but position's too gross to fade him, and he's honestly been playing a lot better since about the early to midway point of the season. So I think Evan Ingram has deserved to become an every week starter based on his target totals that he's getting. And then to the next game, we have the Chargers at Bills. As I mentioned, this is the highest paced game of the slate, and I expect a lot of points to be in this game. So both of the quarterbacks in this one are subsequently in my top 5. Justin Herbert is playing out of his mind on a 16-game pace of 39 touchdowns and 4,800 yards as a rookie quarterback, which is just absolutely ridiculous. If his team was winning games and if they had Derwin James and all the defensive pieces that they've lost, Chris Harris and all that kind of stuff, I honestly believe that Justin Herbert would not only be the offensive rookie of the year, he might be in the conversation for MVP right now. The way that he is playing, he's currently the best quarterback under pressure in the NFL, according to passer rating. And on the other side of things, Josh Allen's playing pretty well too, and I think he's going to be able to put up a lot of points in this game. As far as the running backs go in this game, we have Kalen Ballage still projected to be the starter with Austin Eckler. Not sure he's going to come back or not. And then Zach Moss is the other starter on the other side, and I would sit any other running backs, Devin Singletary or Josh Kelly or anyone like that. Lots of scoring opportunities in this game, as I just mentioned, which is why I'm comfortable starting Moss pretty easily because we know he gets the bulk of the carries. We know he's the goal line back. So if the Bills offense is moving the ball and getting a lot of points, you can probably bet that Zach Moss might get into the end zone on a goal line carry. So I'll take Zach Moss to perform pretty well in this game. And then Kalen Balazs friggin' stinks. Like I talked about this last week. His volume is absolutely insane. The fact that he got 9 targets and like 25 touches overall is freaking ridiculous. I don't trust him, though. He's so bad at football. Please, 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 Austin Eckler, come back. You will be a top 4 running back for fantasy purposes once you get back into this lineup. Austin Eckler, I can't wait until he comes back. I want to see this offense with Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, like firing on full cylinders. I think next year I'm going to be very, very high on this offense because all these guys look really good and Justin Herbert looks like the real deal. Anyway, to the wide receiver position in this game, we have Keenan Allen and Stephon Diggs, who are just bona fide number ones, every week starters, top 10 fantasy receivers. And then the other 2 guys in this game, John Brown and Mike Williams, and I guess you could include Cole Beasley in that. They're kind of solid flex plays this week because of the high scoring nature of this game. All of them, minus Cole Beasley, have big play potential in a potentially high scoring game. So I'm willing to start any of those guys if I need to. Probably Mike Williams, John Brown, and Cole Beasley in that order. As you can see in the matchups, we have Mike Williams against Levi Wallace. Keenan Allen against Teron Johnson. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to deploy Tre'Davious White. If I had to guess, I would say Tre'Davious White will be on Keenan Allen, but when Keenan Allen moves to the slot, then they might just play sides with Tre'Davious White. I'm not really sure how they're going to do it. Maybe a Bills fan in the comments will tell me how they use Tre'Davious White. The shadow matrix tells me that, according to PFF, that Tre'Davious White is used in shadow coverage, but they don't expect him to shadow Keenan Allen this week as he is primarily a slot receiver. And then on the Bills side of things, you can see Stephon Diggs going up against Casey Hayward. It's not nearly the matchup that needs to be feared like it was before, but I mean, that is probably going to be a shadow matchup if I had to guess. So Stephon Diggs, shadow against Casey Hayward. And then the other 2 guys, you can see Michael Davis against John Brown. Michael Davis actually has a pretty good PFF grade, so they don't expect that to be a huge advantage for John Brown. But I think in this game, the big play threat that John Brown is, I am still willing to start him. And then, as I mentioned with Beasley, I mean, he's in an okay matchup, so I guess you could start him as well. To the tight end position, high potential for a touchdown for Hunter Henry in this game. So Rainbow Sherbert should be able to get him a touchdown. So start Hunter Henry with confidence in this one. To the Raiders at Falcons, the next game we have on the slate here. This game actually has the, I believe it's the second highest over-under out in the week. I think Kansas City and Tampa Bay has the highest one, but this one's 55 points, which is very, very high for the Raiders and the Falcons. There should be a lot of points in this one, as you'd imagine, with everyone back healthy for both teams. Derek Carr and Matt Ryan both playing like top 10 to 15 NFL quarterbacks against awful defenses should equal big fantasy production all around. Both running backs on either of these teams are every week starts with volume and red zone carries for Todd Gurley and Josh Jacobs. Both of these guys are just absolutely buoyed by their production that they get on the ground. And they are both top 15 guys for me this week. To the wide receiver position in this game, you could see Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and I would honestly just pick your poison with any of the Raiders guys. Julio should be healthy for this game. He left early a couple times last week, but he should be okay, I guess. And he boasts the highest advantage on the slate in terms of his cornerback matchup against Damon Arnett at 66%. And Ridley is right up there with him at 47% over Trayvon Mullen. So these 2 guys should be awesome this game. And the reason I say pick your poison on the Raiders side of things is because I don't know who you're going to pick. First of all, who do you play? Like you could play the most productive wide receiver on this team is Nelson Aguilar, but the guy with the most upside on any given week is Henry Ruggs. So do you want to risk it with Henry Ruggs? Do you want to go for safety with Nelson Aguilar? Either way, I don't blame anyone for playing a receiver in this game because Atlanta is terrible against the receiver position. So, I mean, hopefully this can be the Henry Ruggs breakout game that I've been waiting for, but I mean, he's only ran 50% of the snaps last week, so I don't really know exactly what they're doing with him. Maybe he's just not picking up the playbook fast enough. I'm not exactly sure. But hopefully Ruggs and the Raiders passing game is able to torch this Falcons defense and at least keep Atlanta throwing a lot. But I think the majority of the Raiders passing offense is going to come from this guy. That's Darren Waller. Auto start in fantasy. Obviously, he's the tight end too. He's right behind Travis Kelce in terms of target production, red zone work, all that kind of stuff. I saw someone tweet out the fact that they have a 2 tight end league with both Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, which is absolutely unfair. That should not be allowed in any kind of 2 tight end league because that is a positional advantage unlike any other, because you have the 2 far and away tier break best tight ends in fantasy football right now. And that's just absolutely not fair. The position is absolutely so bad that Hayden Hurst can goose egg last week and still be ranked inside my top 12. So Hayden Hurst is a guy that you could roll out there. If to the 49ers at Rams, you could sit both quarterbacks in this game. Both Mullins and Goff are in for tough matchups. This should be the exact opposite of Las Vegas versus Atlanta, which is going to be a complete slugfest. At the running back position in this game, I would start only Raheem Mostert. If any other running backs are in this game, not named Raheem Mostert, if Raheem Mostert doesn't play, I would literally sit every running back in this game because he was activated off IR. So I think there's a chance Raheem Mostert does play. And if he does not, I would sit every single running back in this game. As I mentioned, Rams running backs are a three-way timeshare until someone gets hurt, and it's a bad matchup. So I'm not going to start any of the Rams running backs or any of the Niners running backs unless Raheem Mostert is healthy. To the wide receiver position in this game, I think you can start both of the Rams wide receivers and then low-end flex Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk if he's back from his COVID situation. I don't think he will be, but Deebo Samuel probably sees an upgrade if Ayuk is out, which is probably what is likely to be the case. Deebo Samuel, you can see going up against Jalen Ramsey. Not exactly ideal. As we saw, Jalen Ramsey actually kind of struggled against Mike Evans, but I don't think I'd put money on him struggling against Deebo Samuel. On the other side of things, you can see Woods and Kupp going up against Emmanuel Mosley for Robert Woods and Jamar Taylor for Cooper Kupp. I think they both had excellent weeks last week, and they're both solidified as top 24 guys for me this week. Neither guy is like inside my top 10 or anything like that, but I think they're both going to be productive in this game. And then to the tight end position in this game, I would sit both Rams tight ends, and I would start only Jordan Reed if you're desperate on the 49er side of things. To the next game we have here, we have the Saints at the Broncos. To the quarterback position in this game, Drew Lock, I would sit him, and then Taysom Hill I think is definitely startable. Is Taysom Hill a good quarterback? Real life, is he a great passer or any of that? No, probably not. He's not really a good quarterback, but he runs like a madman. So we know he is going to be valuable for fantasy in a similar tier that Cam Newton is valuable for fantasy, because Cam Newton is not really a good passer either, especially at this point in his career. For the running back position in this game, you can start Alvin Kamara and flex both Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon in this game. Kamara is going to be fine. Just settle down, everyone. I know everyone's freaking out about Alvin Kamara because he only got one target last week. My thing is with Alvin Kamara is that the only worry is that Taysom Hill takes away goal line work. But if you have Kamara, you're likely going to make the playoffs. And by that time, Drew Brees should be back anyway, according to the timelines that we've seen. So even if Kamara takes a dip from now until Drew Brees' return, he should be back for the playoffs. So I wouldn't be overly concerned if you have Alvin Kamara. I have Alvin Kamara, and I'm not really concerned. I don't expect him to get one target per week. That's not who Alvin Kamara is. He's a 6, 7, 8 target per game guy. Maybe it's only 6 instead of 9, 10 like it was with Drew Brees, but 6 targets per game for Alvin Kamara is still plenty. So don't be too worried about him. On the Broncos side of things, Lindsay and Gordon ran absolutely wild on Miami last week. That's absolutely not going to happen again, though, because New Orleans is not Miami's run defense. Miami's run defense is actually terrible. Their pass defense is quite good. But the run defense is one of the worst in the league. So I would say they're both low-end flex plays, Lindsay and Gordon, but neither guy I'm really confident in. I would only start them in a pinch. To the wide receiver position, I would say you can only start Michael Thomas confidently, and then you can low-end flex anyone else. Thomas is in for a brutal matchup against Bryce Callahan, who's been absolutely incredible this season. But, it could mean more targets for Sanders if Michael Thomas is in a tough matchup. But, I don't really want to start Emmanuel Sanders if I can help it against AJ Boye, as you can see there. On the Broncos receiver side, you can see Jerry Jeudy had a rough game last week, but he did see 8 targets still. And so I'm willing to use him in the tough matchup that he had against Miami last week. He's not in for quite as tough a matchup against Janoris Jenkins this week, but it is still not a cake matchup, not a super easy matchup. So, Jerry Jeudy's inside my top 40, but he's not a guy that I think you have to start. I would rather start Michael Pittman Jr. if I had them over Jerry Jeudy, because I think Jerry Jeudy is in for another bit of a down game probably in this one, as is the whole Broncos passing offense. To the tight end position in this game, I think you can stream both guys. Both guys are big red zone plays, or big play red zone guys who understand that you have to understand that Noah Fant and Jared Cook and Jonnu Smith and these guys that are big play and red zone guys are going to be inconsistent, but you got to take the bad to get the good. You have to keep rolling these guys out as back end tight end ones unless you have better options like a Dallas Goedert or an Eric Ebron or something like that. To the next game we have here, and this one I'm super excited about, obviously, as a Buccaneers fan. Chiefs at Buccaneers. I'm also kind of nervous for this game and very just much terrified that Patrick Mahomes absolutely dissects my defense. If they let him, what I mean by if they let him, the Bucs have stopped playing their aggressive man blitz style of offense or of defense, and they're just kind of like sitting back and letting teams carve them up, which you saw from Jared Goff on Monday night when he just absolutely just threw underneath routes to Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods all game. They're playing scared. That's how they're playing. And if you play scared against Patrick Mahomes, he's going to kill you, because What they did against Aaron Rodgers was not play scared. They got up in the receivers' faces. They blitzed Aaron Rodgers. And even though Aaron Rodgers is a very smart quarterback, tremendous at recognizing blitzes and all that kind of stuff, as is Patrick Mahomes, he got rattled because this defense has a lot of speed, a lot of talent, and they can rattle a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I think they can do the same to Patrick Mahomes, but they have to be aggressive. They cannot sit back and let Patrick Mahomes just settle for field goals, because that's not going to happen. He'll get you one way or the other, whether it's underneath or over the top. I think the Bucs offense is feast or famine. So yes, start Tom Brady in this game, but I can see this going one of two directions. Brady's excellent, and this offense pops the hell off, and they put up 40 points and potentially even win this game, or they fall flat on their face, all the way they did against New Orleans and the way they did against LA. So this isn't a good defense, so they should be able to put up points in this game. But I wouldn't be shocked if they shit the bed, and I wouldn't be shocked if they absolutely blow the doors off the Chiefs either. So all around kind of confusing game, but hopefully the Buccaneers can pull it out for my sake. To the running back position in this game, start Clyde Edwards-Helaire and start Ronald Jones, sit Leonard Fournette and Le'Veon Bell. And I'm going to say, don't ever question my instincts relating to Clyde Edwards-Helaire again, because is he going to get a 75% snap share and 25 touches per game? Probably not. But if you give me 15 to 18 touches and 80% of the red zone work for the Chiefs offense, he's a low-end RB1, because that's how good the Chiefs offense is. That's how talented Clyde Edwards-Helaire is. If you see Clyde Edwards-Helaire's runs and catches, he literally makes like three tacklers miss every single play. He'll have a 3-yard run where he makes 4 guys miss. Like that's just how the way he plays. He's a souped up version of Devin Singletary, as I've talked about it on numerous occasions. And if Devin Singletary does anything well, it's make people miss. So Ronald Jones, on the other hand, got absolutely Bruce Arians on Monday Night Football this past week. If they had any functioning brain cells on this coaching staff, they would realize that, well, Rojo sucks at catching the ball. I'm not denying that. He can't catch. I don't know. He's got friggin' lobster claws for hands. But Leonard Fournette dropped 3 passes. Ronald Jones dropped 1. Leonard Fournette missed a blitz pickup. Ronald Jones missed 0. Leonard Fournette can't run the ball. He misses wide open holes with his Trent Richardson-ass vision. And Ronald Jones is a minimum 3 to 4 yards per carry every time he touches the ball. So I have no idea why they continue to perpetuate this. Leonard Fournette is our third down back, and he's the more reliable of the two, because not only is he not as reliable as Ronald Jones, he also is not good at anything. He can't run, he can't catch, he can't pass protect. So why is he on the field? Anyway, that's the end of my rant. But last week was a bad matchup for both of these running backs. This week is not. Kansas City is susceptible to the run, so give me Rojo in this game as a mid RB2. To the wide receiver position in this game, Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin, Evans, and Antonio Brown need to be in your lineups. Dart throws for anyone else. If you want to start McCole Hardman, be my guest, but it's kind of risky, obviously. The primary slot receiver for Kansas City is Tyreek Hill, and he runs over 56% of his routes from the slot over the last 6 weeks. As you can see by the matchup chart on the screen, you can see he's matched up against Sean Murphy-Bunting for by far the biggest advantage in this game on the Chiefs side of things, and that's because Sean Murphy-Bunting's by far the worst corner on the Buccaneers. Cooper Kupp last week, as the slot receiver, went 13 for 11 receptions and 145 yards against Sean Murphy-Bunting. I expect a similar output from Tyreek Hill with potentially even more touchdown production and big plays. Currently the fourth highest advantage according to PFF at 50%. On the other side of things, Evans and Brown should be in for plenty of big play opportunities in this game, but Godwin is the receiver I have ranked the highest due to the matchup. As you can see on the screen there, Chris Godwin going up against Tyrann Mathieu. Honey Badger has not been the Honey Badger of old. Despite the past, in the past 5 weeks, Honey Badger's allowed 22 targets, 18 catches, 190 yards, and a touchdown, while also getting a pick, despite playing against Buffalo, Denver, the Jets, Carolina, and Vegas. None of these teams have super great slot receivers like Chris Godwin. So, I mean, the fact that Tyrann Mathieu has struggled against those teams is kind of surprising, given the fact that Jerry Jeudy's probably the best slot receiver of that bunch. And Chris Godwin's better than Jerry Jeudy in his sleep. So, Tyrann Mathieu's 52.1 coverage grade yields the second highest advantage on the week at 54%. So as you can see, all 3 receivers have advantages over their matchups, but Chris Godwin has a great matchup nonetheless. To the tight end position in this game, you start Travis Kelce and you start Rob Gronkowski. It's a tough matchup for the passing game in general, but last week was a tough matchup for the passing game in general, but Gronk still received 6 targets. So he's firmly a top 8 option for me. And Kelce is awesome at pretty much everything in life. So I think he's a great option as well. To Sunday Night Football, Bears at Green Bay Packers. In this game, you sit Nick Foles and you start Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers performed in a terrible matchup last week, so I am comfortable rolling him out there any week, and this week against the Bears, even in a bad matchup. David Montgomery, by the sounds of it, we have word that he's returned. He's cleared the concussion protocol, and he's going to be back for this game. If David Montgomery is back, sounds like he might be, according to reports, as I just mentioned. But Montgomery against this god-awful Packers run defense should actually be in for a good game in this one. So I have him inside my top 24, even though he's coming off of an injury. Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones. Temper expectations again. Obviously, against the Colts last week, he had a bit of a down game. I expect him to have a bit of a down game against the Bears run defense as well. To the wide receiver position in this game, it's pretty simple in this one. Only start the two studs, Aaron Adams and Allen Robinson. Anyone else is a dart throw type of play. You can see the matchups on the screen right now. Allen Robinson against Kevin King is just free cash, but Jair Alexander will probably shadow Allen Robinson. So that definitely downgrades his matchup with Alexander and coverage on him, but I still think Allen Robinson's good enough to win that matchup. And then Devontae Adams against Jalen Johnson on the other side of things. He's going to wipe the floor with that dude, even though he is having a good rookie season. To the tight end position in this game, both guys are low-end streaming options that you basically just have to hope for a touchdown. So give me Robert Tonyan over Jimmy Graham if faced with the choice, because the Bears have been susceptible to the tight end position. And Jimmy Graham just in general is probably not as talented as Robert Tonyan. To the Monday Night Football game. And on paper, this seems like it's going to be an absolute romp and stomp by the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks at Eagles. To the quarterback position in this game, you start both quarterbacks. Russ is awesome and should be in for a blow-up spot in this one. We'll see if Carson Wentz can get it done in this game, but this is as good as a matchup as Carson Wentz is going to see. So if he can't get it done in this game, you just can't rely on this dude, especially with the playoffs coming up. Running back-wise in this game, you start Chris Carson and Miles Sanders. Pete Carroll already hinted that Chris Carson is going to be back for this game, stating that he was held out last week due to the short week that they played on Thursday Night Football. So he has 11 days off, Thursday night to Monday night in this game. So that should almost guarantee that he's back, but still monitor practice reports leading up to this game, because if he doesn't practice all week, that's definitely not a good sign. But I do think he's going to play in this one. Miles Sanders should be in for a big game if the Eagles offense can figure their shit out, which, I mean, I have absolutely zero confidence that that's going to happen, but if they do figure their shit out, then Miles Sanders should be in for a big one. To the wide receiver position in this game, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett never leave your lineup. And I think on the Eagles side of things, you can low-end flex the two receivers they have there with Travis Fulgham and Jalen Reagor. Metcalf versus Darius Slay, as you can see on the screen there, will be a fun matchup, but give me Metcalf versus any corner in the NFL, to be honest. I don't care who it is. Tyler Lockett having a great matchup makes for a great spot for him to smash as well, though. Going up against Nickel Roby-Coleman could be another big game for Tyler Lockett. On the Eagles side of things, Fulgham and Reagor are good players in their own rights, but Wentz is honestly just not good. He's dog shit. He's playing terrible, and I cannot trust either of them comfortably right now, the two receivers. So both are usable in a pinch against the Seahawks pass defense, which is terrible. As you can see the matchups there, Fulgham against Trey Flowers and Jalen Reagor against DJ Reed. DJ Reed has actually been pretty good since he's come in, and it's made the Seahawks pass defense a lot better. But I still think I'm willing to throw those guys in my lineup if I'm out of options inside my top 40-ish receivers. Both of them are. And then at the tight end position in this game, finally, we have no sign of Zach Ertz yet. He's been activated off IR, I believe, but I don't think he's going to play in this game. Until then, Dallas Goedert is a top 6 tight end option coming off of a great performance last week. So that's all we got for you today. Everyone, this was a longer episode because there was no bye weeks. But thanks for sticking around. If you did, leave a like on the video as usual, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new, hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime we post videos, anytime we go live. We will be live before the Thursday games kick off, which will be around, 11:30, 12 o'clock, before Houston and Detroit kicks off on Thanksgiving. So if you guys are, maybe you're not American like me and you want to tune in and catch that live stream, me and Danny will be live early Thursday afternoon. So peace out, everyone. Enjoy your Wednesday.